up? And welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris, here as always with my co-host, A to Z Sports writer Zach Ragan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. I can hear something in my ear. What's playing right now? Oh, there it is. I found it. I just had a page open on another tab. That's cool. Live broadcasts, folks. Isn't that fun? Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to the Big Orange Podcast. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if you want to listen to that on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify, and rate, review, and most importantly, subscribe. When you subscribe, you won't miss an episode when we drop them on Mondays. And then also on Mondays, go and subscribe to the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. And that way, you won't miss these live streams. You can come hang out with us and be a part of the live stream. Comment. We talk about the comments constantly throughout the show, so you can weigh in, give us your take, along with listening to all of our nonsense. So, and I guess I should say, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. There you go. That's for the YouTube. And outside of that, at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TD, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach and I write on the internet. As folks are rolling in here, let's just get right to it. The Tennessee Volunteers go down to Miami, Florida, and they lay the smackdown on Clemson. And I just want to say right off the top, Zach, I have gained a reputation for being the cynical guy, for being the Charlie always chooses Tennessee to lose guy. Guess what, folks? I chose Tennessee to win, and the boys did it. The Tennessee Volunteers took down Clemson in convincing fashion, a 17-point win over freaking howdy-doody looking ass Dabo Swinney. And, man, that was a good time. What is up, Zach?
You know, I did not pick Tennessee to win, unfortunately, but I did correctly predict how many points they'd score. So maybe I'll take some pride in that.
Nailed
I said
it.
they scored 31. Unfortunately, I said Clemson would score 38, and that Tennessee defense looking as good as it's looked all season, right? I mean, they weren't perfect. They gave up a couple of big plays in the first quarter, a couple of times that Wesley Walker maybe could have went and high-pointed the ball, went and got the ball and had a couple of interceptions there. He was in the right spot, which is, I think, very encouraging if you're a Tennessee fan. But, yeah, that was a fun one. I was very anxious right before the game started, not really knowing what to expect. And then those first couple of drives really, had me all over the place thinking where this thing was going to go because Klubnik showed, I mean, he's obviously got a lot to work on, but you can see the talent with him, right? He can make some plays happen, but you could see he was a true freshman too. Some of those super long drop backs where it kind of like when you're playing Madden and you get the rush after you and you're trying to make something happen and you just run almost all the way back to the goal line before you throw the ball. That's kind of what he did there a couple of times. And some of those mistakes Tennessee was able to take advantage of.
Definitely. It was a game where it was classic bowl game stuff. I said that before the game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to get weird. And it did, because you look at those stats. I mean, Clemson outgained Tennessee. Clemson basically won in every single statistical category, except for, and Crompton pointed this out on our postgame show, points per play.
Well, yeah, Clemson ran like 100 plays or something, which is
100
insane.
plays in this game. And according to Crompton, I didn't double check this, but I trust that, he's a grown adult. I trust what he finds on the internet. I don't know. But he said they were 0.1 points per play, and Tennessee was half point per play. And there's your game right there. I mean, that's the whole thing. Tennessee scored, Clemson didn't. And so it's fun to finally have that 11-2 season under your belt, even if it is the end of the season. What a magical season it was. It was cool. We're going to talk about all of it. But it really was great. And yeah, I mean, Danny says here, we already got folks commenting. He says, where was that defense against South Carolina? Yeah, it would have been in the playoff if that would have showed up there in that game, but such is life. And I like this. Jared says, Charlie went through a character arc this season. Pretty accurate.
Well, this is the first time in, that you've been in this media thing for what, almost a decade or so at this point, right? And Tennessee's never come close to this before. So we haven't got to see Charlie under these circumstances before.
I have grown from being bitter and just what are some other words, just cold about Tennessee sports. I had nothing but terrible things to say about the administration and everybody there, and it's become the administration is strong, the football team is good, the basketball team is good, the baseball team is good. Like, that'll change a man. What can I say? That will bring you around. If Tennessee finally shows that they can do the thing I've always wanted them to do, at least for the last 20 years, I mean, that's, you can change my mind. I am not completely set in my ways. But before we get into all of that, obviously, we're going to break down the Orange Bowl in full there, but then also kind of talk about what it means for the future going forward. And then from that, talking about that future conversation, a little bit of transfer news, a cryptic tweet from Tennessee's best running back. That's always fun. We'll talk about that. And then get in a little basketball right at the end. I'm actually about to go. This episode's going to have to be a little shorter than usual. I'm going to the basketball game. Tennessee playing Mississippi State tonight, and we'll talk about it all. But first, got to tell you about the amazing sponsor that keeps this show going, Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? It's close. It's coming to a close, but you still got plenty of time to bet on some football. Superbook Sports gives you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms. No guys across the pond setting lines for American sports. Just the best team of odds makers in the business behind the counter at Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, Superbook features some of the best odds boosts and promo bets you will find anywhere. Download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com and start your battle against Vegas right now. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. That is Superbook Sports. Shout out to them this whole season for fueling the show. Go download their app. Bet on their app. You could have cashed in Tennessee plus 6.5. They beat that spread by, can I do math? 17 plus 7, whatever that is. I can't do math. 24. Beat it by 24. There we go. So, getting down to business here in this Orange Bowl. This one, I'm kind of at a loss for exactly where to start because there was so much coming in. All of this talk, like, can Joe Milton overcome his stuff? Can Tennessee's defense stop Cade Klubnik? There was a lot of different storylines going in, and it didn't happen how I think most people thought it would if Tennessee was going to win. It didn't happen the way that I thought it would if Tennessee was going to win. Tennessee gave up a ton of yards, like 400 plus yards in this game. Clemson in the first half, 7 drives ended on Tennessee's side of the field, and they produced 6 points. Clemson just couldn't finish. And then on top of that, and we want to talk about where credit goes in terms of not allowing Clemson to finish there. And then on top of that, Joe Milton, the offense was not as crisp as it ever was with Hendon Hooker this season. 31 points, though, against one of the best defenses in America this season. Frankly, they were missing 2 of their top pieces, but still, I mean, an incredibly admirable effort from Joe Milton. Where do you think we should start, Zach?
I mean, I think the story is the defense. I mean, Joe Milton, I thought he looked pretty good. There was some good. There were some things that I really didn't like. Specifically, there were several times where he could have got first downs, tucking it and running. I felt like when the pocket broke down, I don't want to say he panicked, but he just didn't look like he knew exactly where to go. Where Hendon Hooker knew exactly which lane to take, kind of where he just had a very good feel for when a play broke down, where to go and where to make something happen out of nothing. And Milton, he just looked confused. He was looking around. He's kind of running around in circles, and he's sacked for a loss. And I mean, the good thing is he's not turning the ball over, but Yeah, it's kind of the same thing we saw from Jared Garantano all those years. We're holding on to the ball a little too long and taking some sacks there. That was really the only negative with his game. I feel like if he can clean that up a little bit and improve in that area and be willing to take off and run. Like there was one specific third down, I think he missed the completion, and it was kind of, you're out there near the boundary with the defender and the receiver. Towards the middle of the field was wide open. Like he would have had the first down, no issues. And, he didn't tuck it and run. And that could have been something the staff was telling him because the backup quarterback situation, we thought Taven Jackson might be available. He wasn't. So Gaston Moore was your backup there, and you didn't really want to get into a situation where you got to put him into the game. So maybe they were taking it easy with Milton and running. But, yeah, for sure, the defense to me is the story. They were able to get pressure on Klubnik even when they weren't sacking him. They were right there in his face, forcing some of those bad decisions. I thought the linebacker play was really good, especially Aaron Beasley, who easily could have been the MVP of the game. I think it kind of tells you that Jeremy Banks missing that South Carolina game isn't necessarily the reason why they lost that game. Yes, he's a good player, and maybe it did have a little bit to do with the energy on the field that night. But the linebackers they put out there played pretty well against Clemson, and that's obviously a plus. Your defensive backs, I didn't think it was as bad as it looked at times. I thought they were in the right spot a lot of times. They just either they weren't fast enough to make the play. They just didn't go make the play, like I mentioned with Wesley Walker earlier. But it seemed like they were in the right spots. Like they know what to do. They just maybe aren't athletic enough to make it happen.
I'll start here. Jeff says Milton was actually accurate. Whomst have thunk it. And to Big Ten Jeff, I do have to. He's an Ohio State fan for those that don't know, who for some reason watches this show constantly. We were all rooting for you, Jeff.
We were.
I was. Frick, dude. Why did you let them come back and win that game? Why?
If Marvin Harrison doesn't get hurt, I think they win. Right? I mean, they have to. They weren't stopping him. They weren't stopping him.
And on that note, had a bet with Jeff that Marvin Harrison would have the same or less yards as Jalen Hyatt did against Georgia. He did beat that in his time in that game. We'll talk about it, Jeff. I already told you we would. So
what did he finish with, Harrison?
I want to say like 106 or something.
Yeah, he's a great player. I still, not to get too deep into this, Jalen Hyatt deserved the award this year because it's kind of a stats based award, and what he did was impressive number wise. But I'll say that I think Harrison will probably be the better pro player. I don't, Tennessee fans probably won't like that, but I mean, he's elite.
I wouldn't deny that.
He's elite. He's a great player. So, just like with the Heisman Trophy, we've seen lots of Heisman Trophy winners that don't translate to great NFL quarterbacks. And I'm not saying Hyatt won't be a good pro. I don't know. We'll have to see how his game translates. But, I think that's a fair thing to say, is that Harrison might have the better pro career.
Yeah, but just by far, when you're talking about the season, Jalen Hyatt had the better season. I honestly,
yeah,
this gets used like way too much as a phrase, but it really wasn't that close. It wasn't. It just genuinely wasn't in terms of the singular season when that award was given out. Anyway, so back to Milton in this game. Jeff says he was accurate, and I think some other folks said that too. They were surprised. Yeah, Danny said the biggest curiosity for the game, he actually had touch on passes. Yeah. Now, I said this going into this game. Milton, in those mid-range passes, can do it. In fact, I think there's a case to be made that he's actually better at those mid-range passes than Hendon Hooker was. He rockets the ball in there into tight windows. And
that third down throw
yes,
to Ramel Keaton, I believe, was one of the best throws he's ever made, because that window was non-existent. Even if you look at the Skycam video, there's a little more room there than you thought, but not much.
Yeah, the pass to Brew McCoy for a touchdown.
I thought he missed the receiver complete. I thought he was throwing it to Jacob Warren. I thought he just badly missed, and all of a sudden Brew McCoy comes down with it.
No, it was just an excellent throw to the back of the end zone. He really has gotten far better at that particular skill, and huge credit to him. You already said it there. The running has to improve. His awareness in general. He's just not that slippery, scampering guy like Hooker was. I don't think he ever will be. He's just way bigger. He's not as quick to react. He took some sacks he didn't need to take. There was just some stuff like that where you go, this can be polished off, but I don't think he will ever be, just because it's not in his skill set, he'll ever be that, slipping and sliding around, evading pressure sort of guy. But I think what he could get better at is when a play breaks down, eyes upfield, looking, deciding to run. Like there was one in particular, I don't remember the exact spot in the game, but there was one where he had gotten out of the pocket. I think he was running to the right, and he sees a receiver ahead of him. But if he would have just run the ball, it's an easy first down.
That
Easy
third down
first
play that I referenced, I believe. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, you did.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you referenced a lot there. Yes, and he could have just run, and you just go like, just run it, son. What do you do? You don't need to throw the ball. You don't have to throw the ball there, and he does. And there's just some stuff there where I think Heupel and Halsley can polish him up during this offseason. And I think it's there for him in this game. Did he solidify being the 2023 starting quarterback? I don't know. What if Nico gets in there and is absolute magic during this offseason? What if Taven Jackson emerges? I don't know. But to me, I think at a baseline, he obviously absolutely proved he will win you football games, especially if Tennessee's defense comes to play.
I think going into this next season, obviously they're going to have this quarterback competition in the spring, whether it's very legit or not, I don't know, but they're saying they're going to have this competition. And I texted you this yesterday. It kind of reminds me of Clemson the year they won the championship with Trevor. Did they win the championship that year? When Trevor Lawrence was a true freshman and Kelly Bryant started the season as the starting quarterback. They're undefeated, and Dabo benches Kelly Bryant for Trevor Lawrence, the true freshman. And I feel like you might have that situation with Joe Milton and Nico, where Nico's obviously, that's your guy. That's the future. That's the guy that you want to win a national championship with. Like if Nico leaves Tennessee and doesn't get to the playoff and play in a championship game, it'll be a disappointment. Like those are the kind of expectations that are on him. And rightfully so. When you grab the number 2 player in the nation, that's what you're saying. We're competing for championships. So I think it could end up being a type of situation where Joe Milton starts the season and maybe he's playing well, but they look at Nico midway through the season. They're like, yeah, I think he's ready. He can go out there and be even better in this offense. And it's too early to make that prediction, but it does kind of have that feel to it.
It definitely does, because he's a guy that I think it's all there for him, but I could see, if they think that the other option is good, I could see having a short leash next season if things go off the rails a little bit. But that game did not suggest to me at all that they would, at least not in the first few games. You open up with Virginia. That should, no offense to Virginia, this should be an easy win. And it kind of brings the whole Clemson thing full circle, first of all, with Tony Elliott, who was, according to reports, close to being Tennessee's coach at one point instead of Josh Heupel. And then was the offensive coordinator at Clemson at the time. You can shut the door on the whole Clemson thing there. But you start the season off there. It'll get real at Florida. Mm-hmm. And what happens there when you really have to become the guy, where Hendon Hooker obviously embraced that moment and took it by the horns. Will Joe do the same? I say that this was Clemson. It's not like this is some lame duck team that he went and stuck it to in this game. And he made some incredible plays and throws in this one.
I will say, and I don't know if there's any Georgia fans in here, they probably won't like this. And it's not necessarily an insult, because Georgia doesn't have to necessarily do this because they have such great athletes. But I listened to some of the post-game interviews with Tennessee players and Clemson players, and then Cooper Mays spoke with Dave Hooker on a podcast this week, and he asked him about the defensive looks. And Cooper Mays said this was like Clemson was the hardest team to prepare for, because every single week they were putting something different on tape defensively. They didn't really have just a base defense that they ran. It was almost like Tennessee's offense. Like they based it on what the other team's offense was doing. And they gave Tennessee a lot of different looks early in the game, where they were running 3-man pressures, 4-mans. They were just switching things up a lot. And Cooper said it was the most, like, Clemson gave them more looks than any other team did this entire season, including Georgia. So I think this was a really hard game to scheme up for Josh Heupel because you didn't know. I mean, you were kind of they're usually dictating how the game goes, and they're kind of having to react to Clemson's defensive looks this game, which is not something they've had to do a lot of this year. So for me, that's even more encouraging when you look at this offense that they can get into a game like this where the opposing defensive coordinator and Clemson's defensive coordinator that took over for Brent Venables has a really good reputation. He's kind of an odd guy, but he's kind of a defensive savant, is how he's described. You get into like a chess match with that guy, and Heupel was still able to come out on top against some really good talent. Even though Miles Murphy wasn't there, they had some guy like Breesy, however you say his name. He's going to be playing on. He's going to be a top 10, top 15 pick in the draft. I mean, there were some really good defensive players on the other side of the ball, along with a really good scheme. Tennessee didn't go out there and put up 60, but they put up enough. And that to me, like, yeah, we know they can win the shootouts. We know they can get in a shootout with Alabama and win it. We saw in Pittsburgh this year and now Clemson that they can get in kind of these games that don't necessarily go their way or aren't as clean as they want them to be and still come out on top.
Do we have is this Nick Saban in the comments here? The NCAA will stop this illegal offense.
Saban's already tried that.
If you can't beat them, make sure the NCAA changes the rules.
Look, the referees were trying to change it on Friday night, and that's why Josh Heupel got flagged early in the game on that quarterback sneak.
Yeah.
And we all knew exactly what play was coming in that situation. It's what was it? Was it a 3rd and short or 4th and short? I can't remember, but it was like either 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, and they're hurrying to the line. And you know that Joe Milton's going to sneak it. We saw Hendon Hooker do it several times this year. He did against Florida. He did against Kentucky. And that's what he did. They picked up the first down, and all of a sudden, you know, the dramatic flag from the ref that did not like Heupel at all. And later on, we found out through John Boy, who does a lot of baseball stuff and lip readings, and he slowed the video down, and Heupel was complaining about how long it was taking them to set the ball. And Tennessee was going up there ready to snap the ball, and they're waiting for it to be set and ready, declared ready for play. It was almost like he was holding it when there were no substitutions happening, which obviously not supposed to do, and Heupel was livid. And that's what Saban wanted initially back in the day when Auburn and Gus Malzahn were going so fast. He kind of wanted, I think it was like 10 seconds after the ball was spotted before you could snap it or something absurd like that.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, so they were doing some things to get Tennessee out of rhythm. I don't know if those referees were doing it on purpose. If they were Big Ten officials, they're not used to seeing offenses move that fast, maybe, so they didn't really know how to handle it. Maybe that was part of it, but it certainly frustrated Josh Heupel.
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. I mean, they were Big Ten refs. Of course, they were Big Ten refs, and they're used to watching Big Ten football. I guess I don't know.
This comment here, Dwayne says the offense has to give the defense time to get set and substitute. That's not
true. No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah, the defense only gets time to substitute if the offense substitutes.
Yeah.
And when the offense substitutes late in the play clock, it's kind of at your own risk. They will hold the ball, and you could get a delay of game.
It's exactly why Tennessee.
And they don't have to be set either.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee plays an extremely tight rotation of players on offense. They rotate a ton on defense.
Yeah,
they defensively cover 100 plays a game like they did in this bowl game. But then on offense, they run an extremely tight rotation because they never substitute. That's why. So welcome to football, Dwayne. There's the rules of football. So that's it on offense. I mean, there was a lot of other fun stuff that happened. Squirrel White had a huge game. 109 yards, touchdown in that one, and just that kid is just so beautifully built.
Got
for
some
this
personality
offense.
Too.
Oh yeah. Oh, the waddle after the touchdown.
Did you see when Ramel Keaton caught his touchdown where he literally just strolled into the end zone? If you look at the sky cam view of that play, which it's beautiful because you can see what Joe Milton saw when he throws that pass to Keaton. As soon as Keaton catches it, Squirrel turns around and starts giving the defensive back that was covering him the business. It was hilarious.
So good. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of fun stuff like that, but I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole today, especially because we're time crunched about like how they might look in the future.
And we got a whole spring of that to talk about.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about the transfer portal in just a second. That also sort of involves maybe the wide receiver rotation, some stuff like that. So defensively, we've already talked about some of it, but Tennessee in this game impressed me in a way that they haven't since, I would say, the Kentucky game. I mean, Vandy, you blanked Vandy, but Vandy is garbage.
Well, the
To be
Vandy's
completely honest.
I mean, they're not. I mean, they were almost bowl eligible.
They were.
So
hey.
It's not like they were terrible. Yeah, I get it. You can't brag about. It's not like you shut down, LSU, or actually, they almost kind of did one of these high-powered offenses. But yeah, I mean, it was a good performance, especially considering the situation the week before.
Yeah, that's true. They played with a lot of pride after that South Carolina game. And that was good. I 100% credit there. But in terms of just an overall really impressive performance, I go back to that Kentucky game where they held Kentucky to 6 points. First rounder Will Levis. They had interceptions on him, and it was great. This game was just is completely comparable to that, if not better. Obviously, Klubnik looked like a freshman, and there's some element there that has to be, you have to talk about. But I think he probably doesn't look as much like a freshman if Tennessee is not in his face constantly on like every play. They were just killing him. And it started.
He was making good throws. He's an accurate
he was. He is gifted. He's a gifted quarterback. But, the game essentially started on that first drive with a brutal sack by Aaron Beasley. And Aaron Beasley was so good in this game. 12 tackles, 2 sacks. I mean, he just absolutely brought it. Best game of his career. And really gives you hope for next season as far as that goes. That's so good to see because, you're losing guys at the linebacker position.
I know at one point we were texting with me and you and Austin Stanley. It was like, is he playing too good right now that he might start thinking about the NFL? And that's not the case, but he played that well.
Yes, he really just brought it more than I think we've seen him bring. He had some impressive moments during the season, but this was just
He's
really
the one guy on defense that showed up against South Carolina for sure.
Yeah, and so that was really nice, and it started there. But then you also got nice performances from Byron Young and some other dudes just on that defensive line. And
Byron Young, that sideline, that when he shoved Klubnik down, the sideline to sideline speed he showed there really impressed me. I mean, I think that's a guy that's really underrated as far as his NFL prospects.
I would agree. Kind of an under the radar guy, but he could absolutely find a spot on Sundays. And you really start when you talk about this defensive performance, you start with the line and the linebackers and the defensive backs. Yeah, they had pass interferences. Some of them were kind of, I don't want to say game saving, but strategic, where you don't allow a touchdown. You take the 15-yard penalty and not allow a touchdown, some stuff like that. And overall, I mean, 2 interceptions on this kid. And now, granted, one of those was Klubnik running for his life, and he threw up a total stinker.
Jump pass. It was 4th down. I mean, Tennessee would have had better field position dropping that pass, really.
That's true. That was the one where Tennessee would have been in a better position if he would have just batted the ball down. But
I think it was Tamarian McDonald.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would grab that interception too. I mean,
100%.
Yeah.
You got pad those stats.
But
it was good.
Credit to Wesley Walker intercepting that one in the end zone, and he about took it out, and he's like, no, I'm just going to take a knee right here.
Yes, I mean that one was huge. But just in general, the way they played, they gave up a lot of yards. But it was also the exact epitome of everything we talked about all season long with this defense. It's that way on purpose.
Yeah.
Like they do this for a reason. They know at 100 plays a game, you're not going to stop somebody completely unless it's Vandy. But you're just not. And so they bend and they don't break. And then thankfully, Clemson's kicker, who has, I don't think that he had missed 3 kicks all season, and he misses 3 in this game in that first half. And, shout out to that guy for stinking it up, but that's, sorry about it. But, they held him to field goals, and that with this defense is a win. When you hold a team to a field goal and then you hope they miss it. It's essentially what got you the win in the Alabama game. You hold them to a field goal at the end of the game. They kick it. They miss it. You go down, you score. I mean, it's a huge strategic win for Tennessee when they hold you to a field goal, and they took advantage of it in this game. And even still, Tennessee had a bunch of 3-and-outs in this one, and overcame all that. Even the game, the game got down to 21-14. The defense finally gave up like a full sort of comprehensive drive from Clemson. And then the offense thankfully just comes right back and answers. And I believe that was the
Keaton.
the 50-yard pass to Keaton. It was beautiful. But it just was the exact epitome of this Josh Heupel system. The defense faced 100 plays, gave up 14 points. You almost can't ask for more from this defense. So much credit to them in this game. They were just huge.
Yeah, speaking of Keaton, I mean, what a story this year. I mean, he's such a quiet kid. He's been under the radar the whole time since he showed up. I mean, you kind of just knew him as Harrison Bailey's teammate in high school. It kind of came along for the ride, and he's really showed up this year whenever Tillman went down. I mean, where would Tennessee be without him? He made so many key catches, and he showed against Clemson too. Now that we got that other view of that long catch, that it's not just Heupel scheming guys open. Obviously, the scheme is what it is, and it's impressive, and it works almost all the time. But Keaton put a double move on that Clemson defensive back, and I mean, he totally crossed him up, and he about fell, and that's why Keaton was so wide open. It wasn't the scheme; it was just the move that Keaton put on him. So, really can't wait to watch him next year. He's going to be one of those 3 wide receivers where Tennessee kind of goes with a three wide receiver rotation. They don't substitute a lot, so it's pretty much just 3 guys. It'll be interesting to see as we start talking about the portal here in a minute, if they bring in one of those guys and how they rotate those receivers then. I do think there will be some tweaks with the offense. We've seen that from year to year already with Josh Heupel. We saw a little bit different with Joe Milton, some of those short passes to start the game where it was almost like an extension of the running game. It'll be really interesting to see what they scheme up for next year. One possibility, they didn't throw to running backs much at all this season.
Yeah, that's true.
And when that pocket collapses, maybe that's something that they can kind of work in to help Milton there. If you got to check down the guy that kind of pops out, maybe that's something that they work into the game plans and the scheme next year.
Yeah, you got Cam Seldon coming in, who's kind of a wide receiver, running back. Not really sure exactly where he's going to play. All-purpose sort of guy. Could maybe be perfect in that spot. But yeah, back to the defense quickly. Nugs in the comments, he says Beasley was the real MVP. If he was given the MVP, I wouldn't have argued with it for 1 second. He really, in terms of just how he stepped up and how the pressure on Klubnik just totally changed this game. I don't think you could say enough about it. Honestly, yeah, I mean, Elias, he says it in the comments here. It's a great point. Great psychological football if your opponent keeps having to drive 10 plays to score only to have it wiped in 2 plays. I mean, it almost got to a point with Clemson where they were just sort of hopeless when they got the ball. And you could tell their confidence was shot. They were tired. I mean, 100 plays in a game, that's going to wear you down as much as it's going to wear down the defense. So it was huge. And yeah, and Kelly says it here. Beasley set the tone for all of that. That's
oh yeah,
and that
early on.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive, so impactful in that game, and he really did. And also, shout out to Nugs. Hopefully, you watched the post game with me and Crompton. I gave you a shout out because you shouted out the Rattle and Snap whiskey on our YouTube page. Nugs, Nugs bought Rattle and Snap and said it was good. So, shout out to him and Rattle and Snap whiskey. But
Beasley, by the way, led the team in tackles this year. Since all the stats here are final, led the team in tackles with 76, led the team in tackles for loss with 13. Byron Young had 12. The next closest was shockingly Roman Harrison, who had 7, and he added 3 sacks. So really, really solid season for Aaron Beasley this year.
Absolutely, and exciting going into next year. And before we move on to this discussion about next year with transfers and things that might be happening there. Anything else with this Orange Bowl that you want to hit on, Zach, before we move on?
I'm sure there's plenty. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me was after the game, Dabo talked about how field goals weren't going to beat Tennessee. And it was a question when he showed a little bit of nepotism and used his son on a fake field goal. He had done that before this season too. I think I can't remember what game it was in, but I remember watching, and I think they picked it up the previous time. That was very ill-advised. But then after that, he makes that comment, and they still kept trying these field goals on Tennessee's side of the field. I mean, they made 2, and then they missed 3, and then you got the fakes. I mean, 6 attempts? basically, knowing that field goals weren't going to beat them. Other teams that have had that same mindset, you saw them going for it on fourth down. LSU did it. Florida did it. And we saw that a lot. Alabama did it some. I was really surprised that Dabo didn't take that same approach as some other teams, especially knowing that field goals weren't going to get it done. I mean, even if they make those field goals, they still lose the game. So that was a strange strategy from Dabo, and just his management of this game wasn't elite in any way. I didn't think. I mean, he could have helped his quarterback out at the end of the second half and got some points there. I didn't think he really. I mean, obviously that falls on Klubnik, and I think Dabo, though, the way he immediately went over there to Klubnik, it was like he was putting the blame totally on him, because you know how Dabo is, look at me, all about me type guy. I mean, I think he could have taken some blame on that one too.
If Dabo has the ability to be introspective, not sure he does, honestly, but if he does, I think Clemson might be staring down the barrel of a very serious problem here in the next few years, because they have not recruited at an elite level. It was clear last night. I mean, Tennessee is not there talent-wise with Clemson, and they got bullied.
Mm-hmm.
What, last night? Whenever it was, a few nights ago.
Yeah, it was
but yeah,
3 nights ago, 4 nights ago.
But Tennessee bullied them in the defensive trenches, and that's not, you can't win a national championship that way, because if Tennessee's bullying you, Lord knows Alabama and Georgia will. So I think they got to be really careful, and especially, I mean, Dabo needs to get with it on the NIL stuff. He's got to stop that whole nonsense, and just embrace actual, the way that football is changing, because I think this was a little bit of the changing of the guard, especially with the way that Tennessee competes with Clemson in recruiting. Hopefully this was meaningful, not just as an 11th win on Tennessee's incredible season, but in that Tennessee is kind of snatching that chain back from Clemson, because Dabo took it, and maybe Tennessee is finally going, no more. We're going to be taking players out of your state, just like you took players out of our state. And this whole, reign from Clemson over the ACC maybe coming to an end, if like I said, if he's not careful. They didn't win it last year. They didn't win it this year, but then they got smacked around by Tennessee and South Carolina. So, it's
something to watch. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we all know Nick Saban's nearing the end of his career. Who knows? I mean, it could be another 5 years. I don't know, but eventually he has to retire, because he's 70 now, right? I mean, he's already getting up there in age. If things start going kind of sideways at Clemson, where they're winning 10 games a year, but they're not getting to the playoff, that Alabama job comes open. For years, I did not think Dabo would go there, but I would not be surprised if that happened at this point. I don't know why you would want to take over for Saban, but if things aren't going well at Clemson, you got to have an exit strategy.
Yeah,
I
could absolutely see him, if things continue down this downward trajectory, I could see him looking for greener pastures. But that's kind of a different podcast in itself. So to move forward in the future, obviously, since that game, it was a few days ago, there has been some transfer movement a little bit. Not a ton to talk about here, but some updates in terms of who will be visiting potentially to Tennessee as a potential transfer, who maybe won't be. And then should we start with this Jalen Wright thing?
Yeah, I think we got to. That's the big news of the day, or the big, not really news, just the big topic of the afternoon, it seems like.
Yeah, I think a lot of people saw it. Jalen Wright, star running back for Tennessee. I mean, in my personal opinion, as of this moment, the best guy in that running back room.
Led the team in rushing yards this year.
Yeah, well, there you go. I got to find the exact tweet here. He said, "This is a business, nothing personal." That's all he tweeted. Take that as you will. It sounds like he could be saying, nothing personal, I'm out of here. Or is it one of these situations where he's playing the negotiation game, saying, I'm going to transfer if you don't set me up with some NIL stuff, and I'll put it out publicly. There could be multiple dimensions to this, but how did it hit you, Zach?
I mean, it's it's hard to. I mean, I almost hate reading into these tweets from college kids because they could mean anything. Sometimes they're not even football related, but at the same time, like they're very aware of how things are taken. They know anything they say or do is going to be talked about by people like us. It's going to be all over Twitter and written about and on message boards. So they have to know the power they wield with their Twitter accounts. I mean, we kind of saw something like this with Tyler Barron last year. He didn't really tweet anything out, but he put it, he put himself in the portal and then came right back out of it. So you have to kind of think about, is it NIL related? Of course. Is it a play to try to get more money? There was a talk about Tennessee taking a transfer running back, Marshawn Lloyd at one point, who's not visiting anymore, as I understand it, from South Carolina. If he would have been taken by Tennessee, you'd have four running backs that saw significant action this year. You've got some guys coming in, Cam Seldon, who you mentioned, who can, kind of a hybrid guy, Khalifa Keith from the former Kentucky commit. So it would have been a pretty crowded room. Obviously, you think somebody's going to transfer out. I don't know if this is indicative of maybe they've told him that somebody's coming in, or he's just trying to get more NIL money, or he beat somebody in FIFA and this is his way of talking about it. I don't know.
Like Elias says, he just dominated his team.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Obviously, that's like, all that happened.
No, Jonathan Conbo reference there.
Yeah.
Man, you don't want to lose him. I like Jalen Wright. I
do too.
God, he was supposed to be like the speed complement to Jabari Small, but he showed this year he's a physical runner. I mean, he ran through some tackles. He had some really nice runs, and he had some issues kind of with ball security early on in his career, but it seems like he's gotten better in that area, and he's become somebody that they kind of depend on and count on. I think Dylan Sampson's the most talented guy in that running back room, but I think Jalen Wright's like your most dependable guy right now.
Yeah, and Brent says this in the comments, and I had actually I texted this to you.
Charlie mentions Hayden almost every day.
Look, I love Aaron Hayden, and I want his son to play football at the University of Tennessee. I will not hide my bias. And Brent says, only chance the RB Hayden from Ohio State enters the portal. His dad is UT legacy. Yeah, I mean, his dad, Aaron, and Dallin, I mean, they obviously Ohio State lost. Dallin was the backup all season. He's a freshman. I mean, that's usually the time when you're a backup. But come on down. Come to Knoxville, please. Don't let us whiff on all of Aaron's kids, man. Please. Now, if that happened, I would completely understand a transfer. Honestly, if not multiple, if you had that. Kind of the same with Marshawn Lloyd. If they brought in Marshawn Lloyd, I would really expect it, frankly. Somebody transfer out of that running back room because it's just somebody's getting pushed out. Somebody's not going to play. I wouldn't expect it to be Jalen Wright, but it is what it is at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, if Hayden comes, I think that's one thing. But outside of him, like even with Lloyd, I'm comfortable with the guys they have in that running back room, especially with the guys that they've signed. I don't think it's an area where they need to be focusing. I get that you're always trying to upgrade the roster, but we've heard coaches talk about this a lot. The portal can be a double-edged sword because you're bringing in guys that aren't familiar with your culture, they're not as moldable. You can't mold them as easy as an 18-year-old. You're bringing in maybe a 20, 21-year-old that's been in another program for a couple of years, and bad or good, it's just a different culture a lot of times. And if you bring that in, maybe it messes up the chemistry in the running back room. I'm not saying that is what will happen, but those are concerns that I think you have to think about. So I just think there's other areas that are much more important to address right now. And there's only so many guys that you can talk to and recruit and evaluate. I mean, this is a really busy month for them. It's a really hard thing to go through all this and find who you want and get to know them and fill them out and realize if they're a good fit or not. I'd spend more time focusing on defensive backs, defensive end. You kind of need another one of those, another tight end if Jacob Warren doesn't come back. And he said today that he'll probably decide next week if he's going to come back or not next season. He's still thinking about the NFL. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. But yeah, I mean, I would probably pass on the running back unless it's Hayden, and I don't foresee that happening, much to Charlie's dismay.
Sadly, I don't either. But somebody can dream. Yeah, we'll just have to see if anything actually comes of this. Hopefully, it is just a Tyler Barron-ish type situation at worst, where he is just kind of being like, "Hey, look, this room's getting crowded. I think I'm the best dude here. Like, I need a little recognition, something like that." And I know a lot of people gripe about that, and to some extent, rightfully so. But this is the way of the college football world now. You sort of have to re-recruit your players year in and year out, even
And,
when you just had an 11-2 season.
and tampering's happening. You know,
Oh
tampering
yeah,
is definitely happening. Jalen Wright's he's from Durham. Perhaps UNC or NC State, one of those schools, is going through some back channels trying to talk to him and maybe see if he wants to come back home. I mean, they're not not reporting that that's what's happening, but those things do happen, and they happen. Tennessee's doing the same thing with kids too. So don't think that it's other teams' programs being malicious. It's all happening.
like like Jalen said in that tweet, it's just business.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as that situation goes, if he announces he's in the portal, we'll talk about it. If not, then it's a non-factor.
Yeah.
But beyond that, some visits to Tennessee from transfer players. You mentioned there, the word has sort of come out from the recruiting services that Marshawn Lloyd probably isn't visiting Tennessee. I heard, is it USC is the favorite there? I want to say, although they just lost to Tulane, which so maybe they need somebody. But
Did you see Caleb Williams skip out the post-game press conference?
oh, I did.
Like they
Yes,
moved his nameplate thing.
that's yeah.
Not a good look.
That bugs me, man. That is stuff. It's not a huge deal,
Makes
but
me
it's
think of Kyler Murray. That's what it reminds me of, like how he would handle things.
well. And to that point, I think it's something that would throw up a red flag for an NFL GM and
Yeah.
go like, okay, he's a little immature still.
Mhm.
You know, he doesn't want to go out and face media after he had a tough loss. Oh, boo-hoo. They'll dock you for that. Of course, he can't even leave this season. He's too young. So he can get it together with another year under his belt. Oh, well, I appreciate it. Nug said thanks for shouting me out. I clipped it and sent it to my wife. Like, look, honey, superstar Charlie Burris shouted me out live with Jonathan Crompton. That's right, superstar Charlie Burris, baby.
Dang.
That's what they call me.
Crompton didn't even get the superstar status.
Yeah, I know. The guy that played quarterback at Tennessee under Lane Kiffin. No, it's me. I'm the superstar. Let's go. Anyway, outside of that, Dante Thornton, wide receiver from Oregon, supposed to be visiting, and then I think is it this defensive lineman from Arizona State supposed to be visiting also. Lot, yeah. Right? Supposed to be visiting also. That would be a nice pickup. And then the potential replacement for Darnell Wright, also offensive tackle. Where'd you say he was?
Miami.
The kid from Miami. That's right. Campbell,
Yeah.
the kid from Miami, also supposed to visit here in the next week or so. So all of those would be great pickups. I think in particular, the one that sticks out to me is Thornton. I think he has the potential to be an immediate contributor. The other two are definitely positions of need, but you look at like an offensive tackle, like it's a tall order to go replace arguably the best right tackle in the SEC this season. Like Darnell Wright played to that level. He is projected extremely high in NFL draft boards by some services.
He's a first round pick in some, like Pro Football Focus had him as a first round pick.
I mean, he really impressed. He didn't miss a game this season, and you saw that like on the other end at the left tackle position, just rotating injuries all season long. Never once anything out of him like that. I mean,
he lived up to the 5-star billing.
He's got to be. He's an NFL dream in terms of just looking at the way that he operated in college. He was just head down, do a job, get your work done, kind of dude. And so
he's probably your biggest loss from this, outside of Hendon Hooker, of course, who was going either way. I think Darnell Wright is your biggest loss, even bigger than Jalen Hyatt, because I think we saw Square White can step into that role, and that's not to diminish what Hyatt did this season, but I think White can pick up right where Jalen Hyatt left off. But Darnell Wright, that's a tough one to replace. Him and Byron Young will be hard to replace too.
Yes. Well, so on that note, you got a defensive lineman visiting, offensive tackle visiting. You need both, but will they be guys that will actually live up to that billing? Honestly, it's so hard to tell in the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it with those visits is kind of like, do they fit culture wise? That's a huge question in there too, especially now with the way that Heupel has set things up. I think he is pretty particular with that. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like it's got a little bit of a Rick Barnes vibe there. If you can't take the Barnes coaching, don't come here. He kind of has that sort of policy, and I think Heupel, while he's he doesn't coach in the same way that Barnes does, where he'll
Blame you
go into
publicly all the time.
publicly humiliate guys in press conferences. I think he does have a particular style and a particular culture that he wants to set at Tennessee, and so he wants to see if these guys are real fit. So I think it's them checking out these players as much as it's the players checking out Tennessee.
Oh, for sure.
So,
yeah, it's a two-way street without a doubt.
yeah. But honestly, if all three came, I think it'd be great. You need depth. You need players. At a minimum, you need the warm bodies with the way that Tennessee's roster is set up at the moment. And
Go ahead. Before I forget, what do you think about with Thornton? If they bring him in, he's a big play guy, right? I mean, he averaged like 20-some yards a catch or something like that. But we saw this year where they played pretty much three wide receivers. If you look at the snap counts, it's Hyatt, it's McCoy, and then you kind of got split there with Tillman and Keaton, and then you got Swirl that's like 400 snaps behind them that was kind of coming in at the end of games. How does that work? I mean, you're thinking you're going in with McCoy, Keaton, and Squirrel, and you feel pretty good about those three wide receivers. Who sits? I mean, who goes to the bench? I mean, Brew plays a different game than Keaton. He's your short yardage kind of guy that's going to get yards after contact and barrel his way for a first down. Keaton is he's not just a big play guy, but he has the big play capability. Kind of goes over the middle a little bit, and then Swirl obviously is your burner that you're not taking out of the lineup. I mean, I feel like he's locked into a starting spot next year. So how would that play out?
That's a good question, because you've already heard the rumors of Walker Merrill is looking. Oh
yeah, we didn't even mention that, and I'd feel pretty. I feel like 75% chance he moves on because he's fixing to be a junior. There's no clear path to his playing time. He's going to have that extra COVID year of eligibility, I believe, or was he a freshman last year? He won't have that extra year.
Yeah, I'd have to.
So he's pretty much got like 2 years to prove himself, and he's a talented guy. When he came in, he made plays. I mean, I think he scored like almost half of his catches were touchdowns this year.
He's caught in a little bit of purgatory. He's just not. He's not quick enough. He's not physical enough.
The guys
but
are just
he is
a little
like
bit
right
better than him. I mean, he's good enough to be out. He's good enough to be out there and start, but the other guys are just like a little bit better.
Exactly. And so I think he could absolutely carve out a spot in the team. So I would not be surprised at all if he jumps out. And then, I mean, with four guys in that rotation, I think you could find some really interesting ways to use all that, especially when you add in Cam Seldon too, potentially being a guy that you could throw the ball to. And, with things like end arounds to Squirrel, which I would love to see, just some things that they could fold in. And also in terms of passing the ball, you have McAllen Castles coming in at tight end and potentially another, if Jacob Warren doesn't stay, another new tight end from somewhere. And there's a lot that they could do there. And we saw this season that Heupel is more than willing to adapt to the guys that he has and use them in a bunch of different ways. I mean, Princeton Fant is example 1A there. They used them in 100 different ways this season. And so it is interesting. Like if they bring in Thornton, I think Merrill is 100% gone. When is he ever going to play if that's the case? And then
you got Nathan Leacock coming in too, who's extremely talented as a true freshman.
And I think he has potential to get into that lineup, even outside, kind of in a Squirrel type way.
Of course, and you got to think too, Tennessee. You saw Cedric Tillman go down this year, and that completely changed their wide receiver rotation. And I think you kind of have to plan for that every single year. You can't assume that you're going to stay healthy at any position. You have to have depth. It's just with the portal, it's so hard to build that depth. And I just wonder, what kind of conversations they have with guys. Because if you're Ramel Keaton, I don't think he's going anywhere. Brew's already transferred, but almost twice or tried to transfer a couple of times. I don't think he's going anywhere. You don't want Swirl to go anywhere. So you don't want to lose any of those guys, but you also need to bring in more talent for sure. It's a tough balancing act.
It is. That's just the nature with everything. Transfer portal. I like I said, I'm going to the Tennessee basketball game here in just a bit, so got to wrap it up here. But anything else with the transfer portal, Zach, before we bounce?
No, just real quick, I wanted to bring up the rumor that's flying around on Alabama's, not on their, I guess it is on their message board, but it's like their reporter said that there's rumors that Jeremy Pruitt could be coming back to Alabama to replace Charles Kelly, the safeties coach that just left to become the defensive coordinator at Colorado. Not sure how much stock we should put into those rumors since nothing from the NCAA has been decided, but if there's some legitimacy to that rumor, does it indicate that maybe Nick Saban is pushing for Tennessee to not have these harsh penalties so Pruitt won't get a show call so he can come back to Tuscaloosa? You know he'd love to have him back for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Pruitt at the moment, doesn't have a show cause. He doesn't have anything. He's been laying low and just essentially what he went to the Jets. And then right now I think he's
Giants.
The Giant. Yeah, sorry, the Giants. And then now he just does interviews on Mike Griffith's podcast or whatever. I mean, Lord knows Pruitt wants to be back at Alabama. And I think Saban maybe has with the way the Pete Golding's defense played this season, I could see Saban being more than okay with going back to the way things were with Jeremy Pruitt. God, that would be funny, wouldn't it?
There's just also rumors about, Bill O'Brien's going back to the NFL. We pretty much know that. Probably. We don't know where, but he's wanted to go back to the NFL. So who's offensive coordinator? Who's the next offensive coordinator at Alabama? I think Saban's going to make a bold hire. I don't know if he tries to go get Jeff Lebby. That's a rumor that's out there. That would indicate a total philosophical change going towards kind of what Josh Heupel's doing. Or maybe if Cliff Kingsbury gets fired from Arizona.
Ooh.
That feels like something that would happen, right? Kingsbury going and serving as Nick Saban's offensive coordinator. If you remember, he was going to be the offensive coordinator at USC after he got fired from Texas Tech, and then ended up going to the NFL. So he didn't take that job, but I think they'd already announced it. So that's should be some interesting things going on at Alabama. And Nick Saban, he adapts, he evolves. We've seen it when he hired Lane Kiffin and moved towards a style of offense that he didn't necessarily love. Does he go drastic and try to copy Heupel or kind of go a little air raid? That would be wild, but I wouldn't surprise me.
It would just be another move like Saban has done in the past. If you can't beat him, you got to join him.
Yeah.
And he lost to Tennessee this year, and that's got to be in some pretty big sense a wake-up call. Not that Saban needs some sort of, he has every national championship that he has, but
no Bryce Young next year, so he's got to do something.
There's a real case to be made that they're not the top team in SEC West next season. Unless he gets Drake May, which apparently that's not happening. May, he tweeted that he's staying in North
who's
Carolina.
Out there now? Who's out there for Alabama to go get?
An Alabama fan would tell you it's Caleb Williams or something like that. Why don't we just go get that kid?
Sam Hartman's really the big name out there still. He hasn't officially went anywhere.
True. Technically,
Grayson McCall went back in the portal at Coastal, or went back to Coastal, came out of the portal, which that seems like Coastal somehow came up with some NIL money, apparently.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they go.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I can tell you this: Jalen Milroe ain't winning the SEC West next season.
Person to watch out maybe is Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. I felt like they played him in that game yesterday just to kind of keep him out of the portal. He turns the ball over a lot, but he's got talent, and LSU also has a 5-star that was a true freshman this year, Walter Howard. I'd keep an eye there too.
I was just looking today. Alabama in this recruiting class for 2023, if I'm remembering correctly, this was earlier today, they have 7 5-stars coming in this class.
Yeah, they're only 3 stars, like a kicker, I think.
One 3-star, and then I think 24 stars. Oh god, kill me.
Yeah.
But outside of that annoying thing, with how good their recruiting class is. It would be hilarious to have Pruitt back in the SEC. And until he gets slapped by the NCAA, I guess technically they can't do that. So we'll see. But I guess
also need commotion at the game tonight.
So I'm going with a friend who is a Mississippi State fan.
Oh boy.
I'll say this about this game: I don't expect to have any, to be causing any trouble like I do sometimes at the games against Kentucky. But this game, I believe Tennessee is the number one defense in America, at least defensive efficiency, according to Ken Palm.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mississippi State's like number 6.
So the final score is going to be like 40-39.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So get ready for that.
That'd be exciting.
Yeah. And I will say this, if there's any movement with the transfer portal or anything, we've been doing these midweek segments that have been really fun. We'll probably hop back on here and do something a little later in the week. So watch out for that on the A to Z Sports YouTube channel, A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. There's A to Z Sports Philly and A to Z Sports Dallas and all over the place. But go and subscribe there, and then you won't miss our midweek segments either. Hit the notification bell too. Tomorrow night we're going to be on with Boogie Bentley on Talkin' Vols. You and I, Zach, we're going to go on the charity live stream. It's a veterans charity that he's supporting. I don't have the name of it right in front of me. And this was just kind of off the cuff. Let me make sure that I get it right, though. I don't want to. Fisher House is what it's supporting, and it helps veterans. And so watch the Talkin' Vols live stream tomorrow night. We're going to be on there with a bunch of other people, and Boogie Bentley does an amazing job talking Vols. That's it. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Ragan. If you're at the basketball game tonight, say what's up. I'll be there. Look for me in the concourse. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. A bunch of people tuned in today. It's a big crowd. We love it. We appreciate you all. Thanks for commenting, for hanging out, and we will talk to y'all maybe a little later this week.
See you guys later.